Welcome to the L&D Explorers Podcast from GoSkills. On today's episode, we talk to Holly Owens, the host of the EdUp Learning and Development Podcast. She joins us to talk about transitioning to an instructional design role. Holly and I discuss her journey into ID roles, the challenges she faced and skills that helped her get established, and the tools and communities new ID professionals can use to find success no matter what job role you're coming from. I'm Dan Gorgone, the course producer at GoSkills. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to the L&D Explorers Podcast. I'm Dan Gorgone, the course producer at GoSkills, and joining us today is Holly Owens. Holly Owens is the host of her own podcast, the EdUp Learning and Development Podcast. So it's nice to have another podcast host on the show. Holly, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Dan. I'm excited. And I think it makes things a little bit easier because you know what's happening on your end. I know what's happening on your end. So I'll try to be the best guest possible for you.
I appreciate that. Well, the reason, of course, that we're having Holly on the show today is not just to talk about how cool podcasting is, but it's also to talk about the topic of the day, which is how to transition to an instructional design role. So many of us out there did not go to school for instructional design. That wasn't our degree program that we studied, and it certainly wasn't our first job for many of us. We transitioned from other roles, and we try to find what transferable skills we have in service of helping to train others, whether it's internally, externally, or working with subject matter experts in many
Right.
different places. So,
hmm
um, Holly, I know that you started as a high school teacher. You
hmm
taught in higher ed. Not to mention that you were also recently an instructional designer at Amazon. So somewhere along the way, you went from education all the way to the company that emails me every day about Black Friday coming up. Uh, so can you tell us, like, kind of lay the groundwork here and kind of tell us about your journey and how you ended up going from one place to instructional design?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk about this whole journey because it just keeps being more windy than I ever anticipated at this point. So I did start my career out as a high school teacher. I taught high school government for about 4 years. And like we were chatting a little bit before, the principal was like, "You're gonna be the ed tech person because you're young and naturally that's what we're drawn to, right? As younger people, or I call myself an elder millennial. So I started training, using the technology in my classroom, and then I saw the impact it had on my learners. And I started training within the school and then the larger school board. Got a little bit tired of the regulations around teaching and all the different jobs that teachers, God bless you if you're an educator at this point, with all the different things that you have to do. So I transitioned out of teaching when it wasn't the cool thing to do in 2011. I did a brief stint in e-learning development with the government. And then a job opened up at Northern Virginia Community College. So I lived in Maryland for 34 years, the DMV as they like to call it. And I started as an instructional technology specialist there. So I started training faculty, higher education faculty, how to use technology in a classroom. There were smart board clickers, the CPS clickers, which don't exist anymore. So I started doing a lot of that, which naturally evolved into instructional design. So helping them with their hybrid, their online in-person courses, kind of developing strategies around helping learners be more engaged, all those different things. And I spent the better part of my career, 10 years in higher education at different university system of Maryland schools. And then uh, personal reasons, I moved to New York, met somebody, moved to New York, became an instructional designer with Touro University. And throughout all this, as the instructional design field is evolving, I'm also teaching. So I started teaching in higher education in 2012 because that's where my passion lies. And then most recently, I transitioned from higher education to corporate, and now corporate to ed tech. So it's a really interesting path for me. And one of the things I would say, the motivation for me and the transition in all these different places is taking the thing I learned previously from the previous roles and implementing it in the new roles, but also being open to learning something new.
Mm.
In these new roles, like I was telling you before, Dan, I'm a marketer now. How did that happen? So that's a
Well,
really
if you got
windy road.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you got skills, especially transferable skills, they will find a
Mhm.
place for you. If
Yeah,
they value what you do and they value your experience, and that's something I wanted to talk about too was, and we'll get to actually to transferable skills. It's definitely something I want to talk about,
sure.
because I think a lot of us who are watching this podcast, especially, you clearly have interest in L&D.
Hmm.
But as far as your journey goes, what were some of the challenges that you faced when you first stepped into the instructional design and e-learning design fields? Because I'm sure that there were tools that you're not familiar with, that there were techniques that you hadn't learned, not to mention, being new to that, coming from a teaching background, and now you're helping other people try to teach, that sort of
Right.
thing. So what sort of challenges did you face?
That's a great question and a loaded question at the same time. So I think right off the bat, one of the things that was a challenge for me is like because I was younger and I was so open in the classroom to technology, once I started to be met with those resistors, I was like, what's your problem? Like, people saying that they don't think technology had any space in the classroom or that lecture traditional material ways to go, pedagogies, methodologies were what they were going to do, and that was the end of it. That was a huge challenge for me to overcome because I didn't quite understand their thought process behind that. I did try to empathize with their situation because that's how they were taught. So they were teaching the way that they were taught, and trying to navigate those challenges initially were something like I took very personally because I'm like, you want to change learners' lives, don't you? Like, you want to do this, and not everybody thinks that way. So I had to learn very early on that everybody thinks the way that you think when it comes to technology use or instructional design. And you just have to find a way to talk to them through something that's important to them to kind of get them to realize like the impact that they're having if they're doing things in an archaic fashion. So I relate it to like if there's a problem, we see something happening, and I'm not bringing up politics here, we see something happening in the government, we don't really make moves as humans until it directly impacts us, or we don't say something until it directly impacts us. And that's kind of how instructional design and ed tech is. When the faculty who are the strongest resistors come to me and they say, you know what, you were right, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for to impact their learners. But it is a nice day when they come in and say, I totally get what you're saying now, and I would like your help without them just, totally writing us off. So that was definitely one of the challenges. The other thing too is upskilling. You are met with a whole bunch of different hats as an instructional designer. So from the articulates to the iSprings and learning management systems, like you have to become a technical expertise in all this technology, and it really doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take years and years for you to become the expert. What I tell people is know enough just to be dangerous. Know the basics of it, but also know little caveats about the technology too that really make you stand out a bit and really will help the faculty or will help the learners because that's how you're going to get the buy-in. And the field's always evolving. So it's like it's not math. We don't have the same formulas all the time. It's not set in stone. So you have to be able to adapt and learn to these constantly evolving priorities and these shifting ideologies about what instructional design is. And I think final challenge, people had no idea what the heck an instructional designer was. Pre-COVID, nobody knew what we were. They had no idea. It's not like a nurse or doctor or something, but post COVID, it's a lot different. Like they realize the impact, and you see all these different companies hiring IDs now from like Sephora to Wendy's to anything you pick a company, they're hiring Bucky's. I mean, anything. Um, so that was a challenge in itself too, explaining what I did and not that I'm just some young person coming in here and saying, you have to use technology, you have to use all these different things. And I said so, sharing my experiences as an educator, sharing my experiences as a faculty member as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned some of the misconceptions about instructional design and certainly like what some people think of you, what some people don't think of you. And I
They
know
honestly
that
don't
like
think about us. They sleep at night better
yeah,
that way, probably.
yeah, I mean a lot of what a lot of what IDs do is on the back end you're supporting people who are or providing the content, who are providing the knowledge and the
Yep.
know-how, and like that's okay because there is a separation between the expertise and the tools. And you're hoping that like that the tools will help support the expertise, will help bring everything that an instructor is trying to share, will bring it out there and present it in a way that makes it intuitive, that makes it accessible and available to everyone in all the different ways. So I know that when I made the transition, like I started as a web designer. I was a web designer for like 10 years and
Yeah.
made the transition because I moved. I needed a new job, and I saw that there was a local university who was doing online degree programs in their marketing program, which I was like
Ironic.
sort of had a step in there because the web design team that I was on was in the marketing program technically.
Yeah, that's
Anyways,
cool.
and so I had this like exposure to a bunch of the stuff that they did, but they were looking for someone to teach a web design course, and I was like, well, I know about web design, I know about usability and all this stuff, and to me, like I knew that teaching was for me after I started teaching, after I put a course together and sort of followed some of the templates that they gave me and the guidance, and I kind of picked the brains of my um, program director and fellow colleagues. I knew it was for me when I started interacting directly with students
Yep.
and got the feedback from them that what I
Mhm.
was providing was really helpful, was really insightful, was really changing their lives, even in a little way, right? So,
Right.
what was it? What was that moment for you when you're in instructional design and you realize, yeah, I can do this?
Yeah, I mean, me too. I could say the same alongside with you as when my students they tell me that what I'm doing works and I can use that data to prove to other people that it's working. And I think one of the things that, really validates my role as an instructional designer is when those resistors have a turnaround and when they start seeing their learners more engaged or they feel more comfortable in what they're doing in the classroom or they feel the less pressured to be the sage on the stage and that the responsibility of the learning becomes something, it becomes learner centric, right? So those moments when they're like, you know what, this really isn't that bad letting go of this control because now what I'm seeing is they're taking the content to a whole nother level. They're discussing things that are happening in the real world. They're talking about problem solving, critical thinking skills that otherwise, like a lecture-based course wouldn't lend itself to. I'm just like I hate lectures. It's super. I mean, there's some points when it's appropriate, but like at this stage in 2024, almost 2025, like is really based on traditional methods, and people don't get a lot out of it.
I mean, the way that society and technology and entertainment and all that has impacted the world and changed things and evolved things, it's hard to escape the influence that technology and social media and YouTube and like TikTok, like the influence that all these different things have on people who want to learn things. And
Right.
I've asked a similar question on the show a couple times with other people. But when it comes to instructional design, like, what sort of impact do you see now on learning that clearly has come from short attention span, type social media technology and platforms and things? I mean, for me personally, like I look at the way that videos are edited now, and it's so much more like chill and relaxed, and there's so much less pressure now on like, you need to make sure you have B-roll and alternate camera things because
Right.
if there's a cut and people see it, then you better cover it up. And now you can have jump cuts, like just like make it
Yep.
really choppy. No one cares anymore because
Right.
social media and YouTube have changed the game, right? I mean, so is there something like that that you've seen where that's had an influence on education and the way that things are presented?
Yeah, I think it's both a good and bad thing that's been happening with like social media and the TikToks of the world and people with shorter attention spans. Number one, the good thing is that it makes us get to the point sooner. Like, what's the point here? Instead of making them go through and click on all these things and things that are irrelevant, we kind of get to the point sooner. Like, people want to know, like, I have to do a certain job and I have to, deal with my customers in a certain way or be proficient at a certain level. So really, what do I need to know? Like that personalization aspect of it is something that I really value as a learner because there's certain things like, I don't want to through a basics training of something like Excel. I'm a little bit more of an advanced user, maybe. Um, but you know what I mean? Like some people don't necessarily need some of the knowledge that we're trying to transfer to them. And also, too, on the other side of that, like I think instructional design and some of these different like the TikToks and things have pressured us to do is really look at what behavioral changes we want to make. Instead of just saying like we have to get a set number of content or units or things out to the students when we can just really focus on like what behavioral change are we trying to impact here? What skill are we trying to develop here? So it's kind of narrowed our focus a little bit more. And like I said, getting to the point of it. The bad side is the same. Like it really you have to really think about like how you're presenting the information. And people don't realize it like a 5-minute instructional design course, if it's a simulation or something like that, that could take instructional designers like 200 plus hours to create that. And the return on investment, depending upon who your learners are, you don't know. You don't know. So like it's a delicate balance between like, do we adhere to what social media is pushing our culture in, or do we adhere to some of the different types of pedagogies, methodologies, ideologies that we've learned? And it's a balance for sure, in instructional design. But I think one of the things that we definitely keep in mind, bringing home this point is like, get to the point. Like, don't fluff is out. It's out.
Yeah.
It's gone.
That's right. We don't want your 30 to 60-second elaborate animated opening for the video
Right,
where we're
right.
just
Like
like, come on.
flying, a dinosaur flying through something. I don't know. I mean, it's really pretty and I love that stuff like in certain situations, but like,
Yeah. Maybe show it once. Maybe
yeah, maybe
once.
show it once.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
People
yeah.
got it. But I
Yeah,
mean, I think you really hit on it though, because it's like, what behavior are we trying to change? Like that really is, that gets to the heart of what we do, you know? And so like when if you approach a L&D project and you've already decided like how long it's going to be or I mean unless there's a like a restriction that you have to abide by, but like how many exact lessons you're going to do or how many of all these things, but you don't even know like what it is that you're trying to
like you
change.
lose sight of that
Yeah,
with all
like
these different,
you
yeah,
got to try you got to make sure you're not distracted by the pretty shiny tools and just make sure that you're focusing on that thing that's really at the heart of what you're trying to deliver and trying to change.
yep,
Um,
yep.
well, we've talked around the subject of transferable skills a couple times now.
Yeah.
Let's get to it because I know that
Okay.
especially like there's got to be HR people out there, there's going to be managers out there who've had this task thrust upon them where
Hmm.
we need you to train our people or we need you to start training things. And so for that audience, what kind of transferable skills are most helpful? Because I can think of a few from my own
Yep.
experience, but you're the guest. I want to hear from you.
I want to hear from you as well because it differs depending on person and experience, honestly.
Yeah.
One of the things I talk about a lot is project management. Like when I was planning lessons and curriculum, like that was a lot of project management, but that totally transferred into instructional design and, managing the different projects. along with that, for like the HR people and the people who are listening, like who deal in that sort of sector, like the dealing with people, like that's a skill. Like it's very hard to teach that
Hmm.
because people get very impatient with other humans, and having and leading with empathy and understanding people's situations. I think educators do that best. You know, nurses, doctors, they have the bedside manner. Teachers have a bedside manner when it comes to their learners. So they really do can lead with that empathy and understand the situation. It's like when you're working with those difficult faculty. So, you know, that's one of the big ones is dealing with people. And then like not being so married to something that if the process changes, you're going to have a freak attack about it. And that's something again, like educators, like you don't know what's going to happen in your classroom from day to day and dealing with those different students. Like if there's going to be some sort of scuffle or there's going to be some sort of like situation where somebody's just having a bad day and they're just out of it and they're outspoken about that. Um, so you have to be able to assimilate to those different situations, and that's instructional design too, because priorities change so quick when it comes to that. So a lot of those transferable skills come from those people in these sectors that are dealing with humans on a
Hmm.
daily basis, and their different personalities and their different attitudes or their different beliefs and things about how things are supposed to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with empathy. I mean, I think that like more than anything, I feel like that gets you to uh where you need to be as someone who is going to be patient and flexible, and also open to
Hmm.
any of those, like sort of nimble, like you're talking about when things hit the fan, like you can really kind of pivot and make changes and stuff. Um, I- and you want to hear from me, right? So public
Yep.
speaking, that's
Oh,
public speaking is a thing that,
that's a good one.
yeah, like that's something where,
Hello, podcast.
yeah, yeah, I mean, well, for some of us, you can look at a camera and be like, all right, I'm fine. I'm just looking at a camera. I'm talking to one person here. It doesn't matter that after the fact, your podcast could potentially be seen by thousands, hundreds of thousands, who knows how many people out there shared and reshared and all that stuff, right? But if you're in the office or you're in a, or a big remote kind of Zoom call, whatever kind of environment, you could have dozens, hundreds of people, thousands of people listening to you as you try to just teach the basics of something, try to get a basic point across, and try not to lose your mind as you're focusing on all the people out there, all the eyes looking at you. Um, One of the first things that I was tasked with doing professionally that was like a kind of like a teaching instructional thing was I was an intern for it was like a research company, and they asked me to do walkthroughs of their platform over the phone with
Oh
clients.
my God.
Yeah. So this is pre a lot of this technology, and yeah, I'm dating
Right.
myself a little bit, but these would be hour-long calls with a client, and they would probably throw you on a like a speakerphone or something on the other end. So there's one problem right there where it
Right.
starts to not sound all that great. But it would basically be, all right, I'd like you to let's begin. Like if you could start here, let me kind of walk you through what's on the screen right here. I'll tell you about some of the features and so on and so forth, and take them on a tour, and I could answer questions along the way. But that was something that um, it certainly taught me the value of planning, right? But also patience and empathy, and being able to kind of develop some of those skills that when you're in the sort of the heat of the moment and they throw you a question that you hadn't anticipated, you can deal with it and it's not a big deal. You kind of learn
Right.
like there is no reason to freak out because these people could be your colleagues and you see them every day and it's no big deal. Or uh, if they are an external audience, they're just trying to get the knowledge, the value that you're sort of promising here, by answering this question. And you just sort of do the best that you can.
And the other thing too is that empathy cannot be taught. It's not
Yeah.
something that is like it's something that's ingrained in you. I feel like it's something. and I always refer back to educators because they have tons of empathy for these students in some of their situations and even their colleagues and
Hmm.
things that like it's not something empathy makes it authentic to me. And if you can relate to somebody else's life and somebody else's experiences, that makes you more human. And as instructional designers, I think it's really important that we remember why we're doing this. And it's not just to get the training out or get check the project off the list. It's because of the people who are going to be inside of these experiences and the learners. And we're all learners at some point or another in our lives. So I think that's the heart of it.
So true. Um, I want to ask a couple more questions before we wrap
Yeah.
up. And so one of them is as far as the L&D professionals out there who are facing these challenges of building projects or programs, and they have limited resources and
Hmm.
tools. Um, not to mention the fact they may be new to this. So,
Hmm.
what are some of like the free tools or the low cost tools or even like the online, secret little things that kind of can help someone approach and accomplish what they need.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say so. If I do a lot of postings around job searching, so I would say one of the best free tools that I've experienced in for a job tracker, just helping you with resume stuff, is Teal. Dave and his team have built something that is like so needed and so necessary, especially getting into this market, because people typically use like spreadsheets and stuff to track, and it tracks it for you and it tells you when you need to follow up, and it's all free. Um, I would also say too, like a project managing tool like Trello or Asana or something that does have like where you can use it for free and still get, excuse me, most of the features because you're going to be dealing with so many different things. Like I would say you need something project management wise. So and as far as like other stuff is concerned, like using the stuff that you already have access to within your companies, like the Google Docs or whatever, if you're using the Microsoft products, using those things as much as you possibly can because of frugality. And seeing what they can do, push those systems to their limits, set processes in place for how things are going to work and what you're going to be using, making sure everybody's kind of on the same page about that. I think that's also really important. But definitely when I was job searching, I used Teal quite a bit. And I've neglected to mention I don't get any royalties from this. So I just love the tool. They have like a little add-on where it will review your LinkedIn profile and give you feedback on what you should be writing in there or
Mm,
what you should be doing. So that's definitely one of the ones that I use. And they have a whole bunch of like resources about transitioning into instructional design as well.
nice. So are there other platforms or communities out there too, since we're kind of talking and sort of
Yeah.
going in that direction
Yeah.
where, you can really benefit from other people's knowledge as well?
Yeah, so Heidi Kirby, who's another instructional designer, created a space called Useful Stuff. It's a community, it's completely free, and we just talk about all things learning and development. We share resources, we share for hiring, we share challenges out there. It's a very safe space to kind of learn and grow. I would also tap to Tim Slade's e-learning designers community. Like that's a great space for people to be, whether you're starting out or you're already in the industry. Again, it's free. And the one thing I really like about Heidi's is like she makes it, she simplifies it down to like the bones of it. Like you really get an insider's perspective onto what instructional design is, what it is not, what you should be doing. We talk a lot about different stuff. So I really go into those communities and, I learn something new every day from those places. And I always tell people to exhaust the free resources before you start investing in some of these paid for opportunities. Learning Guild, ELB, um, there's a whole bunch. There's a whole
Hmm.
bunch I just follow and constantly get emails and updates and from. And then also too on the other side of that, I'm really glad that we're back in person at conferences so I can meet some of these people in person and have genuine conversations, instead of just through the computer screen. So those are some of the big ones like I've been using most recently and reading books, you know.
Yeah. And to kind of follow up too, consume the content, take some
Hmm.
courses. Like that would be my advice to some of the people out there that are trying to, step into like an L&D role and trying to figure out, how do I communicate this? How do I build, things that will help other people teach things,
Yeah.
right? And so take some courses, go in, and place like GoSkills and see what it looks like, right?
Yeah. Yeah. See
But
what it looks like.
other places as well, you can glean so much from watching how different people look at or set up knowledge and set up different things. You don't need all of the crazy shiny expensive things.
Right.
Necessarily you can do so much with so little. And I know a lot of what instructional designers do. It's trying to figure that out, how they can do a lot
Yeah.
with a little.
Yeah. We definitely, frugality is like they want us to figure it out. And the kind of the expectation is that we can because we do so much with so little. A lot of it's brain power, but we figure it out. That's what instructional designers do.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us. I think we can wrap up there. And
Yeah.
I also want to give you an opportunity to connect with people. So, where are the good spots to connect with Holly Owens online?
LinkedIn is my jam. That's where I am most of the time. I'm, listening to my podcast, connecting with me there. That's the best places to reach out to me is on LinkedIn World, and that's where I post most of my content. If you join some of these communities, especially Heidi's, like I'm in there commenting and posting as well. But LinkedIn is where it is.
Nice. Awesome. Well, Holly, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching this episode of the L&D Explorers Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe because more episodes are on the way. And no matter what your learning and development goals are, GoSkills can help. Click the link in the description to find out more. And thanks again for watching.